asking a question, can these bones live? I'm in Miami, where I was born and raised. And I don't know if you've ever been away from home for a very long time, and you come back and you can't recognize it. It's jaw-dropping. It's different. When I think about my life, when I left here, I had a youth program. I was working with youth in Liberty City. I was born in an abandoned building on the floor. And I teach people live a life of no regrets. One of the things that I regret that I didn't come back and do the training with kids that I was engaged in Liberty City after my training was interrupted by Janet Reno, who was encouraged to cast aspersions on my character because they thought I would get funding that their program would not get in Coconut Grove. One of the reasons that we don't have the kind of training that's sustainable and impactful for our children. Those in leadership, one, they don't know that they don't know. Two, they fight and argue over who's going to get the money. And three, they also argue about who would get the credit. So I developed a strategy, my training program, that I would train people who volunteer. And the people in the community would be the people driving it. It would not be around a personality. Some things happen to you and you realize they happen for you. And as a result of that interruption, I turned down the offer of renewing my program. And I said, I'm going to go on the road. I'm going to travel around the world. And using the things that I was teaching these young people, apply those in my own life and demonstrate that they work. And after I earned my first million, which took me 3 years, I'll come back and do the program myself with no funds from the city. After I made my first million, I said, this is good. And I didn't look back. And I kept going because I went to various organizations, the NAACP, the Urban League, churches all over the country, and they're saying, well, we like your program, but you're not teaching young people about Jesus. I said, listen, you teach them about Jesus. I teach the message that Jesus taught. You sell the messenger. I sell his message. And if what you were doing was working so well, I wouldn't be here. But the truth of the matter, they weren't looking at how do we begin to create a self-development program that will give young people a positive image of themselves. They were vehemently opposed to that. They wanted me to teach young people Jesus will fix it. Jesus said, these things ye shall do, and greater things shall ye do. I'm 77 now. Can these bones live? Good friend drove me through Overtown and Liberty City. Nothing like when I came along. Can these bones live? Good question. Good question. Can these bones live? The powers that be ran an expressway through Overtown and Liberty City to disrupt the voting bloc and the businesses. We had our own theaters, own shops, own stores, everything. The expressway, they could have gone further east and down the railroad track and built that expressway, but they deliberately wanted to interrupt that voting bloc and that economic power. Black Wall Street didn't just take place in Oklahoma. No. Take place all over the country to this day. Here's what I know. At 77, the ones that control the wealth, which is 1%, they create barriers that help the rich get richer and the poor get poor. And the ones, people like myself, who break out in spite of, you gotta be hungry. That's what my new book entitled. You get it on Amazon. You got to be hungry. Racism ain't going nowhere. It's unfair world in which we live in. It's not fair that birds eat worms, and they do. What do you want to do with your life? We have an expiration date. Talking to the friend who's driving me, and she said one of the things that she looked at her life, she said her significant other before he passed was trying to prepare her, and she said she didn't want to hear it. And one of the things she's going to speak about is pay attention. The reason that the 1%, after years, centuries of being empowered, and those numbers have not increased, because of ignorance and because of the 99% are divided by politics and religion. Ignorance, politics, and religion keeps us at each other's throats while they focus on the money, while they follow the money. The orange man, his children have made millions, and still are. The rich are getting richer now. The poor are getting poor because of how the system is structured. The culture that we live in now, a culture of violence. But cultures are created by people. A culture of violence and poverty created by people. And they can be changed by people. Can these bones live? Yes, absolutely. And the secret is to maintain commitment. Maintain commitment through all the frustrations, through all the disappointment and setbacks, to build a mental resolve, have a thirst for learning. You got to unlearn and relearn and relearn to increase your value and to create collaborative, achievement-driven, supportive relationships. Can these bones live? Well, you know, Quincy Jones is a prophet. He had a song years ago. He said, everything must change nothing stays the same. Johnny, how are you? I love you. That's my spiritual son, Johnny Winfrey. From the Hood to Doing Good. That's a good book. That's relevant today. When 1 out of 4 African-American males have been incarcerated, have a criminal background, gone astray. From the Hood to Doing Good. And he's a young man that's brilliant, that is living a life of contribution and living a life of impact. One of my spiritual sons. This thing called life. We woke up this morning. We're still here. And that's a blessing. My goal is to teach you how to make the rest of your life the best of your life. I know a thing or two. I've been on the planet 77 years. I know a thing or two. And I know that everybody can't hear me. Everybody can't hear me. Only the few. He said the road to life is straight and narrow, and few there be that find it. Because few there be is looking for it. Majority of people just want to survive, just want to be entertained, just want to go out and buy an artificial booty. It's a boobs, it's a fly swatters. And they are hooked up, they are satisfied. Oh, behave. Oh my God. You know what I've learned to do is just observe. Just watch. Watching people, it's fascinating. And you ask yourself, how can they live like that? Because that works for them. It might not work for you, but it works for them. And it's none of your business. It's none of my business. Mamie Brown, my adopted mother, said, "Oh Lord, help me keep my nose out of other people's business." Like this page and share it. I'm going to drop something on you right now. I want you to listen. Each day when you get up, I want you to declare, "Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto you." I want you to say to yourself, "Lord, this is going to be the best day of my life." And then I want you to get still and say, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth thee." And then say, "Here's what I'm going to do today that will make it the best day of my life today. And here's what I'm going to learn today that I did not know yesterday." You got to be intentional. You got to write it down, focus on it, get a 3x5 card, and write what it is you want out of this day. Put on the flip side, Matthew 7:7, "Ask and it shall be given, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened." Life is for living. Make it your business. Get serious about this thing called life.
So everybody can transform a kind of inconvenience in a huge advantage.
Without any question, and it takes work. Now, there's no question that there are certain situations and structures around the world that don't allow people to dream. You know, I'm doing some work in South Africa right now, in Johannesburg, and my first step is to help people to learn how to dream, because they were under apartheid, a form of enslavement that did not make dreaming possible. And there are other places around the world that are just like that right now. That's destroying people's dreams. And I think that's why we see such global upheaval in terms of many dictatorships, because people are becoming more enlightened. In 2007, Time magazine recognized the computer of the person of the year. And the reason it did, because it gives everyday people access to information that they never had before. And so now people, with that access of information, becoming more enlightened, and it's causing a great deal of disturbance with various types of governments around the world.
It's huge. My message in France, and I would like to spread that everywhere, it's you have a dream, it's possible, so take an action now. How can I help people to believe it's possible?
It's an ongoing process. The faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing. That's what my favorite book says. That you have to be an unreasonable person who's not looking at and judging the circumstances such as you see them.
Yeah.
But you're calling forth those things that be not as though they were. And if you read the book called Change or Die by David Dushman,
I will do.
he said there's a person who is an unreasonable person who brings a message that it's possible and repeat that message. And there are people who hear that message who are able to relate to it and identify with it. And then they begin to move from and develop a whole approach to life with that new level of enlightenment, that as he speaks or she speaks, it begin to give people a vision of themselves beyond their circumstances and their mental conditioning, and challenging them to begin to embrace some habits that cause them to make some new choices that will help them to carve out and become the architect of their future, as opposed to becoming volunteer victims.
Great. You do a lot of speeches
Yes.
all around the world, and you are not the only speaker. A lot of speakers are. So, according to you,
I'm
why-
a trainer. I'm known as a speaker, but my gifting is I started out as a trainer,
As a
teaching people how to live their dreams,
Yeah.
teaching them how to use their voice and their story and leverage their knowledge to go from being local to being global.
Yeah,
That's what
I
my
understand.
gifting is in.
So, as a trainer, why there are some speaker or trainer who give only a kind of information at the end? You say, "Oh, it's interesting," and other speakers like you, according to me, and you feel something, and you're not thinking about, "Oh, it's interesting," but I can do that. I want to take an action. I want to change something in my life. I don't know if it was interesting, but I will change something in my life. What are the differences?
Well, there are many speakers
Yeah.
think that people are stuck because of lack of information. I always say, if information could change people, everybody would be skinny, rich, and happy. They don't need us to come in and speak. They can go online, they can Google the information. So information alone cannot create transformation. That in order to change human behavior, you have to create a significant emotional event. The materials that I provide, the training that I provide,
Yeah.
is designed to impact a person's mind, their heart, and their spirit. And so the goal is to distract, dispute, and inspire, to interrupt their story. How people live their lives is a result of the story they believe about themselves. So when I'm training speakers, I teach them how to become a strategic, experiential storyteller. Be strategic on how they use their story. You never make a point without a story, and you never tell a story without a point. And experiential, because Oliver Wendell Holmes said that once a man or woman's mind has been expanded with an idea, concept, or experience,
Yeah.
it could never be satisfied to going back to where it was. And so when you take that approach to change how they think and what they feel, then you now have positioned yourself to begin to create a thirst. There's no saying you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. You create a thirst where they want to drink, where they want to change. And now you have, because of their encounter with you, you have now allowed yourself to be an instrument, as Mother Teresa would say, in the hand of God.
Yeah.
And now that person will begin to write a new chapter with their lives. So it's about how do we change the story that people believe about themselves that's been given to them by life, given to them by their circumstances. We learn between ages 0 and 5 what's available for us and what's not available for us. And based upon those experiences and the people around us in our environment,
Yeah.
a word formulates in our mind. It's either yes or it's no. A word formulates in our heart. It's either yes or no. It formulates in our spirit, yes or no. And there's various things that can impact the formulation of that word and the conviction behind it and how we move our lives forward.
Yeah.
My goal, if the word is no, is to interrupt that word and to change it to a very affirmative yes.
It's great. I love that. How to have a strong will? Because a lot of speakers are speaking about you have to have will, but how?
Will is, that's why I talk about the mind, the heart, and the spirit.
Yeah.
The reason we celebrate Nelson Mandela
I love
is
it.
that for 26 years, they tried to control his mind, they were able to control his body,
Yeah.
but most importantly, they couldn't break his spirit. And so that deep down resolve,
Yeah.
that dimension that's available to all of us was explained to us in the book called Man's Search for Meaning, that Viktor Frankl, that there's a part of us that's always a part of us that's in our hands, that the irreducible essence of who you are, that either you say yes or no, not based upon the circumstances, not based upon the pressure that's applied, but based upon your conviction. Are you going to give this the power to take advantage of you? Are you going to turn yourself over to this? We always have that choice. That's the greatest choice
Yeah.
that human beings have. Am I going to give myself a pass to surrender, or am I going to stand up? I remember telling a story when I produced my first PBS special on public television of a man who came by a house and there were people on the porch talking, and there was a dog moaning and groaning. The guy was curious, and he went back and he asked the owner, "Why is this dog moaning and groaning?" And the owner said, "Because he's lying on a nail."
Yeah.
The guy said, "Well, why won't he just get off?" He said, "Because it's not hurting bad enough for him to get off. Just hurting bad enough for him to moan and groan." And so what most people do in life, they have the power to change their circumstances. You are made in the likeness and image of God. You've been given authority and dominion over everything on the face of the earth. But most people rather moan and groan about their situation, show up in their lives as volunteer victims rather than become actively engaged in doing the work necessary to change their circumstances. It's been said there are two types of people, those who work and those who watch them. So you got to be willing to do your internal work so that you have the mental resiliency, and your external work finds something that you want to master that will allow you to move yourself forward.
Wow. So we have to. The first step is to find what we want to master.
Why are you here? What's your reason for being? Why do you get up in the morning? Most people don't have a clue. Pay the bills, keep a roof over your head. I think we have to reflect on, who am I? Why am I here? What drives me? If I died today, what 3 words would I want said about me if I died today? You know, what is it that defines me? You know, and how do I define myself? Most people allow their circumstances to define them, as opposed to defining themselves and how they're going to show up in life. And so my mission is to help people to connect with the power they have within, their greatness. When you're pursuing your greatness, you don't know what your limits are, so you act like you don't have any. And when you live from that place, you can now be able to make a greater contribution and make a greater impact with your life, because of the fact that you see yourself in a larger context. One of the principles, there are 9 principles that we teach of greatness.
Yeah.
The first one is each of us can achieve far beyond our horizons and in avenues of life we have never explored. But most people settle in and accept things in life as it has been given to them, as opposed to rising above that, working to create something that they can feel good about.
It's the first principle.
Yes.
What are the next?
The next one is we must take responsibility for our actions and our reactions.
Yeah.
When you look at your circumstances, you know, George Bernard Shaw said, the people look for the things that they want in life, and if they can't find them, they create them. And so when we look at ourselves, it's about doing that. It's about taking ownership for your stuff, for your life. And one of the things I emphasize, that changing is not easy, that changing your life, changing habits, reinventing yourself,
Yeah.
picking yourself up after life has knocked you flat on your back. I've got a saying, when life knocked you down, try and land on your back, because if you can look up, you could get up. Well, that sounds cute, but that's not easy. When I was diagnosed with prostate cancer 17 years ago, that first time that happened, I said, hey, I can handle this. Then when it came back a year later, last year, 17 years later, and this time it metastasized to 7 areas of my body and ate 40% of my T1 vertebrae. Now the stakes are higher. It's this life saying, okay, Mr. Motivator, you beat cancer the first time. What you gonna do now? I started laughing. When the doctor told me, he said, why are you laughing? Are you in denial? I said, no. I said, I feel like Mother Teresa. He said, what do you mean? She said, Lord, I know you know how much I can bear. I just wish you to have so much confidence in me. I said, the stakes are higher. So I've got to dig in and got to fight more, because at the end of the day, life is a fight for territory. And once you stop fighting for what you want, what you don't want will automatically take over. And so it's a fight, it's a challenge in life every day. And what we have to do is embrace it. What we have to do is see it as a project to be worked on. I read something once that I live by. It said, in life, you will always be faced with a series of God-ordained opportunities, brilliantly disguised as problems and challenges. And so I see even cancer as a gift, as a God-ordained opportunity.
It is a kind of test for you to improve
It's a
yourself.
test, right? No test, no testimony. Yes.
Wow.
And so you have to be willing to step up and handle it. Anybody can have faith, David. If the bills are paid, if they have their health, the marriage is working out fine, the children acting like they have good sense, they have a lot of money in the bank, a lot
Everything
of
is perfect.
investment. Anybody can have faith under those circumstances. The true challenge of faith is when life knocks on the door. The true challenge when you lose your health, or something happens to someone you care about, or you lose your wealth, or some tragedy happens to you. All of us over the next year will experience at least 3 tragedies. We will experience it personally, or someone we care about. Charles Udall said in life, he said, things will happen around you and things will happen to you. But the only things that really count are the things that happen in you. And that's where,
Wow,
that's
that.
our domain. That's where we have the control.
Yeah, we choose the answer.
Yes, we did too, and we choose how we're going to respond to this. Will I allow this to get the best of me? Will I allow this to stop me? Am I going to surrender to this? Will I give myself a pass? Will I wimp out on myself? That's always a choice.
I love that. In the speech, just before you said a sentence that I love, can you repeat it about the fact that when it's hard?
If you do what is easy,
Yeah, I love that.
giving yourself a pass, giving yourself permission to stop. If you do what is easy, your life will be hard. But if you do what is hard, your life will be easy. I didn't do what I'm doing now for 14 years because it was hard to make the radical change in my approach, my dress, my learning the language of corporate America, gaining access, developing myself an intellectual resource where corporations would reach over people with years of experience, PhDs and MBAs, and I have no experience and no credentials, and be able to compete with them. It was hard, but we can do hard. All of us have moments in our lives when things have been thrust upon us and we had to do hard. So if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. But if you do what is hard, your life will be easy. And so don't give yourself a pass. Don't run away from hard, because you can do hard. And through that, you discover a part of yourself that you would not know otherwise.
Yeah, you are building your power when you have challenges and when it's hard.
Yes, those things only happen through growth experiences, through challenges. If you go to the gym to work out and you don't feel any discomfort the next day, here's what we know: you haven't done anything. And so you got to challenge yourself.
Yeah.
And you're going to get hurt. You know, Viktor Frankl calls it unavoidable suffering. Life is full of pain and disappointment. It's a part of the process.
And we are proud ourselves when we overcome something?
When we overcome things, we discover things about ourselves. No tests, no testimony. No guts, no glory.
Yeah.
And I was doing a broadcast once, and a guy was coming up, and he had crutches. He was coming up to be interviewed by me, and he missed a step, and he fell. It was a very embarrassing moment. And I went down to help him get up, and he said, "Don't feel sorry for me or be embarrassed." He said, "It goes with being a paraplegic. I fall all the time." And so we fall all the time in life. We make mistakes all the time in life.
Yeah.
You know, there's no life without mistakes. Anything that's worth doing is worth doing badly. It's worth doing right if you know how to do it. But if you don't know how to do it, it's worth doing badly until you get it right. All of us are going to fall on some tough times. 8 out of 10 millionaires have had to file bankruptcy. It's a part of the process. You go up, you go down. And we learn things during the tough times. That's where we really learn things. That's where we begin to discover things about ourselves. Adversity introduces you to yourself, that are part of yourself that you would never know otherwise when things are going real good for you. And so what we have to help people to understand is to maintain a spirit of optimism in spite of their circumstances, to give them hope. Why? Because when there's hope in the future, that gives you power in the present. So my goal is training 100,000 voices of hope who will do 3 things. Help give people hope. That's number 1. Number 2, teach them methods that will help them to develop the desire to reinvent themselves so that they are not replaced by an app or outsourcing, because this is a time where you have to continuously reinvent yourself to stay ahead of technology and cheap labor around the world. That's number 2. Continuing to work on yourself and growing and developing. And the third thing is to build communities, collaborative, achievement-driven cultures, supportive cultures that'll help you to get to the next level. Have a group we call ourselves Cancer Conquerors. And so one goose can fly 75% further in formation with other geese than it could ever fly by itself. So if you got 100,000 voices giving people hope, that's number 1. Number 2, encouraging them to develop their capacity, their skill set. There's no shortage of opportunity. There's a shortage of capacity to take advantage of the opportunities that are available in the global economy.
Yeah.
And encouraging people to create communities of collaborative, achievement-driven, supportive relationships. We can accomplish anything.
And how can the people and me can contribute to these dreams?
They can email me at yes@lesbrown.com. yes@lesbrown.com, and we'll be set up within a few weeks and send them out some information. But also in the meantime, what we will do is send them a video that as they watch this, they'll see the message that I'm bringing and a format. We're going to be teaching them the 7 principles of storytelling so that they can learn how to influence and impact and change lives, one-on-one, small groups, or in large groups.
Yeah. So with 100,000 voices, you can make a big difference in this world.
Absolutely, yes. That's the goal, and we want 100,000 voices outside of politics and outside of religion, both of which polarize and divide people. Just everyday people. I'm not an educated guy. If both my parents came in here right now, I would not know either one of them. I'm adopted. I don't have any credentials. I'm just an average person, and I have a desire to make a difference with my life, to live a life of significance, and to live a meaningful life, and to help others who have a desire to do the same thing. You can either live your dreams or live your fears. And I think the majority of people actually are not living their dreams, but are living their fears. So I want to ask you a question. What are your fears? What are you afraid of? What are you scared of? Because we all have fears, don't we? We all have something that's blocking us, that's holding us back. And as we begin to look at life, what we realize is that the reason that most people are not living out their true potential, are not doing all of the things that they would really like to do, is because of fear.
Some people call fear false evidence or expectations appearing real. I'm reminded of a story of a guy that was living in an area where he had some new neighbors, and these neighbors had a bulldog. And when he came home every day, this bulldog used to chase him about a half a block from his house. Every day, he would have to streak home. I mean, he would just run. This bulldog would be right on his heels. And so he just got tired of that, because he would go home about a half a block away from home. He would look around for this bulldog, and he wouldn't see him. And he would go walking casually along, and this bulldog come out of nowhere, woo, 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 and start chasing him. He'd run home. So this one day, he just got tired. And so when the bulldog was running after him, he started running. He saw a rock, and he stopped to pick it up to throw at the bulldog. And when the bulldog got up on him, he started barking. He realized the bulldog didn't have any teeth in his mouth. Then he started chasing the bulldog. If you don't get on away from it, because the most the bulldog could have done is gum, you know. And so, you know what? Most people go through life running scared. Running scared from things that have no teeth in them, because they're false expectations appearing real. That, see, we're brilliant enough to scare ourselves to death. You realize that? There are some people actually who get a kick out of scaring themselves to death. I remember the last frightening movie I saw. It was The Exorcist. I will never forget. I was so frightened when I came home. I'll never forget. I drove in the driveway, and I had already called my former wife and said, listen, turn the lights on. I was coming in the driveway, and I was getting out of the car, and all of a sudden I couldn't get out. I started blowing my horn. I said, Madeline, they got me, they got me. She came to the kitchen and said, take your seatbelt loose, fool. I said, oh, okay. I was frightened out of my wits. But there are a lot of people who they get off on that. They love it. I'm a person, my brother is a paratrooper. My twin brother, he's in the military, career man. I would love to jump out of an airplane in a parachute. I'm scared, though. I mean, I really admire my brother for that. I would really love to be macho man like that. What are the things that you fear that's been keeping you from living your dream? That's been keeping you from doing some things that you would like to do? Just think about those things. And how do we begin to handle that? Abraham Maslow said that life is about growth. And he said, you can either go back to your comfort zone, and there you won't find any growth, or you must be willing to go forward and face your fears again and again and again, because you're never going to have a fear-free existence. I mean, some fear is acceptable and legitimate. There are some things that you really should be afraid of. Now, you shouldn't allow it to immobilize you. You acknowledge it, you take it into account, and you carry yourself accordingly. There are times that we should proceed with caution, but it's the difference between being stopped by fear. It's the difference between having a fear and the fear having you. So what do? One, acknowledge it, and knowing that it's okay. Don't condemn yourself for being afraid. It's perfectly fine to have some fears. You acknowledge your fears, you embrace those fears, and then you move on. You act on whatever it is that you fear. Because once you embrace it, see, what you resist will persist. What you resist will persist. So one of the most important things is to begin to embrace your fear.
Well, the event in Finland we'll discuss a lot also about responsible business and
Yes.
good business ethics. What is responsibility all about in your eyes?
Responsibility to me it's about understanding and knowing that you have the power to control your destiny, that it's about living your life from a place of creation, that most people go through life doing what I call living their lives as volunteer victims. When you take responsibility for your life, it's about knowing that you have to develop yourself, that you don't get in life what you want, you get in life what you are. You have to develop your mind, you have to develop your skills, you have to have a talent, ability that you are cultivating so that you can create value for the world with what it is you have, with your gift. There are three primary reasons that most people don't, in my estimation, achieve their greatness. And one is that most people don't know what they have going for them. For years, I did not do what I'm doing now because I didn't believe in myself. The second reason is most people don't know how to earn money using their talents, their abilities, their skills, and their gifts. And the third reason is that most people don't know how to gain access to the people that will pay them for what they know. So as entrepreneurs, one, we have to believe in ourselves, and that's an ongoing process, engaging in things that will help us to believe in ourselves, because we are cultivated in a world where we're told more about our limitations rather than our potential. And so faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing. And so we have to constantly go to seminars, go to workshops, listen to audio programs, and read books that will help to expand our vision of ourselves, of what's possible for us. And the other thing is that's very important is working to expand your skill set, to develop your skills, to take your skills to the next level. And the other thing that's important is having relationships with people that you can learn from, that you can grow from, people that will challenge you and that will cause you to raise the bar on yourself and hold you accountable to a higher standard.
Who have been the best speakers, coaches, mentors you know for yourself?
When I think in terms of mentors, I think in terms of Mr. Leroy Washington, who was a high school teacher of mine, who told me, Mr. Brown, develop your mind and develop your communication skills, because once you open your mouth, you tell the world who you are. I admired his communication skills. He's a speech and drama instructor when I was in high school. The other was Dr. Anthony Sweeting, that he and I now work together. We were raised together as kids, and he's a great orator and has such raw talent, ability, and power. I admire him. And Mike Williams, who's been a strategist and has taught me the value of having content as well as the skill to deliver a message that will empower people. Those have been the greatest mentors for me in terms of my style and what I deliver and the experience that I create when I'm speaking to an audience.
You are one of the greatest speakers in the world.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to say that.
Yeah, I'm really sure about it.
Okay, thank you.
What did you take away from your early studies of these speakers? And I'm going to get back to the strategic questions here in a second, but what did you take away from the people that inspired you? What caught your attention?
What caught me is that, one, you can transform people's lives and you don't know them. Complete strangers, based upon how you put your presentation together and them seeing you in a light that they feel comfortable letting you into their minds, and you can take them to a place in themselves that they can't go by themselves, because you can't read the label if you're locked in the box. And so I spent time to study the mind. How is it that I'm meeting these people for the first time? And what is it that I can do to create an experience that will transform them, three-dimensional storytelling, that we can expand their vision of themselves beyond their mental conditioning and their culture and the environment that they're in, and touch their hearts because we're emotional people, and ignite their spirit where they have the courage to say, I'm going to do something different with my life. That's to me is the most important things that we can do, because people are asking when they hear you speak, one-on-one, small groups, or large groups, who are you? What do you have? And why should I care? And so in the course of the presentation, when you address those things so that people feel comfortable, they trust you, they're willing to be transparent and allow you to come into their lives and speak to them and help them to begin to learn techniques and strategies on how to make the rest of their lives the best of their lives. Take them on that journey, that experience. Oliver Wendell Holmes said that once a man or woman's mind has been expanded with an idea, concept, or experience, it can never be satisfied to going back to where it was.
When you think about the audience that you're talking to really understand them, what are those, if you were to boil it down to maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 questions that you ask to really get to know that audience so you can deliver that, What's some of the questions you should ask from every audience before you speak to them?
When you look at yourself, look at the industry, look at where you're going and the goals that you want to achieve, and hopefully they're far beyond what you achieved last year. What radical change must you make in your culture, in your mindset, individually and collectively, and how you're showing up in your industry? Because people don't live life as it is, they live life as they are. So in order to do something you've never done, you've got to become someone you've never been. So what changes are you going to make that will allow you to begin to achieve these goals that you've set for yourself? You're in this place where Einstein said that the thinking that has brought me this far has created some problems that this thinking can't solve. And so now it's about going within. Now it's about self-awareness. Who are you really? Now, how did you get here? And what will it take for you to get from here to over here? This requires at another level, a new set of skills that you don't have right now. So what is it you need to do so that you can upgrade yourself? You know, we have the computer, we have to do updates, okay, to update yourself. Robert Schuller said, we either expand or we are expendable.
And I want to begin to talk about this amazing book with a quote, direct quote from your book. You said, Dr. Miles Monroe, the great preacher and orator, said, the wealthiest place on the planet is not in the Far East, where there is oil in the ground. It's not in South Africa, where there are diamond mines. The wealthiest place on the planet is the cemetery, for there you will find leaders who have never stepped up, innovators or innovations the world has never been exposed to, talents and potential never realized. I am reminded of another man who said, oh God, to reach the point of death only to realize you have never lived, only to realize that you never scraped the surface of your potential. I remember reading about a woman who had just left the doctor's office after having been told she had terminal cancer. She made herself a cup of coffee when she returned home, and as she sipped it, she suddenly filled with anger, with rage, and hurled the cup against the wall and shattered it in many pieces. And as she threw it, she screamed out, I refuse to die an unlived life. And then ending that section, you said this, the only way that you can break through the atmosphere and reach higher altitudes is by being hungry. Hunger is the most crucial element of creating your greatest life. I love this book because I thought that was a great way of capturing our attention. Why the subject of hunger and using that as an analogy or a metaphor? Why did you choose to use hunger as a metaphor for desire?
If you are casual about your dream, you will end up a casualty with your dreams. That most people unconsciously die long before they're buried because they don't realize that they have been marginalized, that they live in a culture where they're told more about what they cannot do rather than what they can do. We've been programmed to think in terms of being one-dimensional, of being an employee, of going to college, graduating, getting a job, working for 40 years, expecting to retire on 40%, which wasn't enough in the first place. The 40-40 plan is gone. It's been interrupted. And so, but most people are not aware of that. The great anthropologist, Margaret Mead, was in London, and she was having dinner. So one of the waiters said, you know, there's several Americans here tonight. And so she said to her guests, let me show you something. She said, let me know when you serve them dessert, and I'll tell you exactly how many are here. He said, you couldn't possibly. She said, just let me know when you serve them dessert. And so when he left, he came back, he said, okay, I've served them dessert. She got up and she walked around and she said, there are 35 Americans in this restaurant. He looked at the roster, he was shocked. He said, how did you know that? She said, in the UK, when you eat a slice of pie or cake, you eat it from the crust toward the tip.
In America, when we eat a slice of pie or cake, we eat it from the tip toward the crust. How do you eat a slice of pie?
I eat a slice of pie from the crust to the tip.
Yeah, now, so you're an exception because you came up in a British culture, okay? So, but the average American will eat a slice of pie from the tip toward the crust. Well, no one told us to do that. We just picked it up. For instance, before 1980, you walk around, you would not see people with tattoos. The majority of people that you see today have tattoos. Where'd that come from? How could that happen? What created that? There was no advertising on television saying, go out and get a tattoo. Well, in America, we incarcerate more people than any place else in the world. And in prison, you're not allowed to draw on the walls. You're not allowed to use your artistic skills on the walls of the prison. There's a penalty. You'll be penalized. You'll be put in the hole in solitary confinement. So they're bored. They have nothing else to do. And so they write on each other's bodies. They write tattoos. So now, when you see people today, all on television and commercials, you see tattoos everywhere. Nobody told them to go out and get it, but being in the culture, there's some things that you pick up. And so picking up a limited vision of yourself is natural when you're in a culture that does not recognize your greatness, that does not recognize your humanity, and create a culture that is designed to destroy your sense of self. And so in order to break out of that, to realize that you are made in the likeness and image of God, to realize that you've been given authority and dominion over everything on the face of the earth, that it takes everything in you. People that are hungry are unstoppable. People that are hungry are relentless. People that are hungry will find a way to win. People that are hungry will not take no for an answer. People that are hungry won't give up. They will persist until they succeed. That's what's required to make it today.